Every hobby or section of media has its own little patch of urban legends, and video games are no different. Throughout all of us playing games for so many years, from kids to now adults, different parts of the world, there have been a lot of gaming urban legends we could just never forget. So here are 10 of our favorites. Also, keep in mind there are many more, so we're looking forward to hearing yours in the comments too. But let's get started off with number 10 and talk about Polybius. Of course, you know, we had to mention this one. I think maybe we've mentioned this in a previous video, but anyway, this is an old one. Polybius was like a legendary arcade cabinet that never ended up existing. Polybius is kind of like a Mandela effect type of thing. Look that up if you're curious. But essentially, Polybius is like that genie movie starring Sinbad that doesn't actually exist, but many people from the 90s, including myself, convinced themselves that it does. Polybius was a thing in the early 2000s. People believed that there was an arcade machine in the 80s that existed and was low-key part of a government psychological experiment. Apparently, playing the game caused psychoactive effects and had intense side effects like insomnia, amnesia, weird hallucinations, all to a freaky degree, and the machine then collected data from the happenings for secret government scientists, which actually sounds like a cool, weird video game concept thing in and of itself, like Stranger Things arcade game psyop stuff. I don't know. There are witnesses that this has existed, even if for a brief period of time, but it does seem like there's no actual proof. And like many urban legends, it's hard to trace where exactly this concept or rumor came from. Some have traced it to the mid-90s. Funnily enough, though, as many articles are pretty quick to point out, the name of the arcade machine, Polybius, is actually the name of an ancient Greek philosopher, historian guy whose big thing was basically don't share what you can't actually verify without seeing it for yourself or hearing through verified witness testimony and reports. Have you ever encountered the Polybius arcade cabinet? I mean, maybe if you did, you got insomnia from it and you don't remember. Ooh, hey, I'm just saying, you never know. But moving on over to number 9, let's talk about Michael Jackson being involved with the Sonic the Hedgehog 3 soundtrack. Yes, for many years, there was a legend or a rumor that Michael Jackson made the Sonic 3 soundtrack. This was always the talk in school cafeterias throughout the land, and for good reason. You know, some of the songs just gave off the vibe. There were some similarities between a lot of Sonic tracks and some subtleties of the big MJ songs. Now, I will say that in the 80s and 90s, there was a common undeniable theme with some games. Occasionally, you just come across a video game box art or a background song that seems very conveniently slightly ripped off of something much more popular. For some people, this was seemingly the case for Sonic 3, and it led to rumors that Michael Jackson was the composer, especially fueled by the fact that, Michael Jackson is on the record as being a gamer. This stood for quite some time until a credited executive coordinator came out and actually confirmed this to be partially true. According to Roger Hector, Michael Jackson had worked as a composer on the game, but then ultimately Sega decided to drop his work when his scandals started to become public. But then there's also an interview with composer Roger Buxer that said Jackson reached out to work on the game with him and ultimately left the project because he just wasn't happy with the quality of the sound and the limitations of the Sega Genesis. We'll link those interviews down in the description as well as everything else we talk about here. The statements were eventually verified by game trailers, but ultimately still, we don't actually know exactly how things went down. But we do know Jackson was involved, so the legend turned out to be kind of true. But next, over at number 8, let's talk about the original Pokemon games and the Mew Under the Truck urban legend. I remember this one fondly. So, by Vermilion City, across the water, there was kind of like a little ledge, dock, that had a random truck parked. This would go away later in the game, like you only had access to it if you were able to link cable in a Pokemon that already knew Surf, so you could surf over there and go check it out. But it was a pretty insignificant area, but of course, young gamers would take an insignificant area and attach some crazy urban legend myth to it. The thinking here and the talk in school and cafeterias and stuff was that Mew existed underneath this truck. That was where you could get Mew. That's where you could find it. And it wasn't the case. But me being so young and being ingrained in that Pokemon world, I and a lot of my friends were convinced that there was something up with that truck and there was some way to access Mew beneath it. Later versions of the game and updated stuff did actually include hidden secret items under the truck if you were to click on the truck, which was kind of like a cool little nod to this wild, rampant rumor, but Mew was nowhere to be found over there. Still, I just have questions about the truck. There's so much mystery there. Whose truck is it? Why is it parked there? Why is it seemingly hidden off? What were the developers intending something else with this truck? Who knows? That's going to continue to be an urban legend. Next, over at number 7, let's talk about Tomb Raider and the Nude code. Of course, there's not really a lot of things to trace for this one. There's not really a lot of research to be done or anything. Let's just be real and call it what it is. Lara Croft in the original Tomb Raider games was advertised and talked up and shown to just be a sexy heroine, and that led to a lot of young players really wanting to see her naked, almost to the point of convincing themselves that there was a way to see her naked in the game with a cheat code. But unfortunately, kids, that cheat code did not exist. There were magazines that pretended to make it a real code. There were people out there that insisted on it, but it was not the case. Nothing officially implemented by the developers. Sure, of course, this is the internet now, and you know there are tons of nude Lara Croft mods out there. That's how things work. But back in the day, no, there was no way to actually access a nude code, despite a lot of kids believing it to be the case. Myself included. This is another one I'm guilty of. But next, over at number 6, let's talk about Grand Theft Auto San Andreas and the Sasquatch. Probably one of our favorite urban legends ever in video games. The Sasquatch in GTA in the woods is not real. We'll just come right out and say it. We've been searching for years. Everyone has. It's not the case. This did kind of ramp up around the time of the hot coffee mod controversy, where people believed that the game that was updated to patch out the hot coffee stuff also removed a Bigfoot. But it never really turned out to be the case. There was seemingly no Bigfoot, but there were plenty of good forums and message boards back in the day posting some really convincing screenshots of seemingly Bigfoot sightings. It almost kind of evolved into Bigfoot sightings like how they work in the real world. The photographs are always slightly too blurry, but just believable enough. It really worked for a lot of people, me included. I just loved this urban legend. There was even a thing after a while where people would provide mod files so you could kind of trick your friends into thinking there was a Bigfoot around in the game. Also, it's worth pointing out that in Grand Theft Auto 5, Rockstar did kind of poke fun at this and include a side mission involving a Bigfoot, but it turns out it was kind of just a guy dressed up. You know what? You should experience it for yourself. It gets pretty convoluted in typical Rockstar fashion, but no, the San Andreas Bigfoot does not exist, sadly. Next, over at number 5, let's talk about Herobrine in Minecraft. This is another wild, weird one that would only exist thanks to the internet, and it was kind of like the early creepypasta days, and essentially people were convinced playing Minecraft that there was this thing out there called Herobrine that would essentially do weird things to your game world, like build things out of completely different material that didn't exist near the biome, manipulate stuff, take the leaves off of trees, and just generally be really creepy. This apparently first started on 4chan, of all places. That's where the Minecraft wikis technically trace its earliest appearance. There's like a screenshot of like another Steve-like character in the game, but with weird, creepy eyes. And since that, people have run rampant. It kind of blew up because of people's curiosity and just the early, vague days of Minecraft, where frankly everything in the game was kind of a mystery, but also thanks to the rise of streamers and Let's Players playing around with the concept of like some creepy character existing in the world. Many streamers made it a thing like it was in the game, where they modded the game to make it seem like Herobrine really existed, but in the official Minecraft code, there was no such thing as Herobrine. There was also a weird rumor where, like, in the Minecraft lore, Herobrine was essentially like the video game version of the creator Notch's dead brother, like he was memorializing him, but that's been proven false because the original creator of Minecraft, Notch, doesn't have a brother. Sorry, guys. Next, over at number 4, this is a more recent one, but this was a pretty crazy one that blew up very quick. The Cooking Mama blockchain cryptocurrency thing. I don't even know where to start with this. So essentially, a few years back, there was Cooking Mama Cookstar on the Nintendo Switch eShop. It was suddenly and very abruptly ripped off of the shop, and then a tweet surfaced where someone accused Cooking Mama Cookstar of secretly doing blockchain cryptocurrency mining stuff, and it was a security issue and it was causing Nintendo Switches to overheat, and that's why Nintendo chose to take it down. The developers of Cooking Mama came out and said, hey, there's no cryptocurrency or data collection or blockchain or anything else shady within the game's code. IGN also later debunked most of the overheating myths, and then there were a lot of rumors flying around just why exactly Cooking Mama Cookstar was taken down. But if you think about it, the blockchain crypto thing is insane, and it's almost crazy enough to believe, and I think that's why it worked and why it took hold with a lot of people. But ultimately, It seems like, according to articles that we'll link, an anonymous person from the Cookstar team came out and said, hey, it's literally just a boring legal issue between the developers and the publishers. That's why the game was essentially stuck in this weird eShop limbo, and it's nowhere near as exciting, sexy, or scandalous as some sort of secret blockchain thing in the game's code. But that's video game news for you, always something crazy going on. Now down to number 3, let's talk Final Fantasy VII and reviving Aeris. This was one that I just think in the late 90s, people loved Final Fantasy VII so much and were so attached to Aerith as a character, and upon experiencing her death, they went through anything they could to try and revive her, either canonically within the story in some sort of alternate ending, or just for gameplay reasons to continue to have her in your party. There's a bunch of crazy over-the-top ways in terms of like what you do in Disc 1, how you build out Aerith in your party throughout the game will affect whether or not she'll live or die later on, even choices and stuff, and being mean to Tifa in the game and preferring Aerith. None of this stuff panned out, and of course, like in other games and other pieces of Final Fantasy VII media, Aeris or Aerith is dead. There's been a lot of creepy things surrounding this, like a lot of people thought that there was Aeris's ghost in the church if you go back there, but it kind of seemed like it was maybe like a glitch type of thing. Still, all this stuff made people go wild, and sometimes people still speculate and debate this stuff, but ultimately, sorry, you can't bring her back. Now down to number 2, let's talk Street Fighter. Street Fighter 2 and Sheng Long, the secret boss character that never really existed in the early days. This was a thing. People thought Sheng Long was a dude, the ultimate boss that you had to find or unlock in some secret way to defeat, thanks only completely just to Ryu's victory quote, or at least one of them, where he essentially says, you must defeat Sheng Long to stand a chance, which then a lot of people were like, oh shit, who's Sheng Long? Sheng Long, that's the guy. We have to defeat him to stand a chance. That's how we beat everything. No, unfortunately, it was the early days. You know how video games were. This was actually a mistranslation from the Japanese version, where Sheng Long is mistakenly for Shoryuken. So essentially, Ryu's just talking about his powerful attack, saying, hey, if you can't beat this, you can't beat anything. So the real translation is, unless you defeat the Shoryuken, you won't stand a chance of winning. So Sheng Long wasn't a dude back in the day, a big bad that you had to beat, but players ultimately had fun with this for years with the lore, and it was a crazy time. Now down to number 1, one of the weirdest urban legends, I think, and I'm not even a sports fan, but the Madden football cover curse. This has been going on for like 20 years, and essentially it suggests that if a player is appearing on the cover of a new Madden game, their team end up won't doing well in the next season, or the player is going to have an injury in season. CBS Sports has a great breakdown of all of the instances and stuff. We'll break them down real quick. So in 2000, Detroit Lions running back Barry Sanders actually never ended up playing on the field after getting onto the cover of Madden because he had an abrupt and controversial retirement. 2001, Tennessee Titans running back Eddie George. 2002's Minnesota Vikings quarterback Duante Culpepper. 2003, St. Louis Rams running back Marshall Faulk. 2004, Atlanta Falcons quarterback Michael Vick. 2006, Philly Eagles quarterback Donovan McNabb. 2007, Seattle Seahawks running back Sean Alexander. 2008, Tennessee Titans QB Vince Young. 2009, Brett Favre. 2010, Troy Polamalu, kind of, sort of. 2011, New Orleans Saints quarterback Drew Brees. 2012, Cleveland Browns running back Peyton Hills. 2014, Minnesota Vikings running back Adrian Peterson. 2017, the Patriots Rob Gronkowski. All these teams and players that I mentioned all have specific instances where, after landing on the Madden cover, they went on to either have an injury or the team had a complete drop in performance and wins. That's a lot, and that's crazy and really, really weird. There's not really too much more to say about the Madden Curse other than we figured we'd just show it in front of you. This is it. These are the stats. I don't know what to think about that. Again, not a sports fan, but the concept of these players getting injured or just not doing so well is really interesting and weird. But those are some video game urban legends that we wanted to talk about today, some of the ones we love the most. But like I said, there's so many more out there. People come up with their own shit all over the place. So if you've got your own, if you've come up with an urban legend either now or back in the day with your friends on the playground, we'd love to hear them for a potential part 2 of this video. If you enjoyed this trip down memory lane with us, though, clicking the like button helps us out a ton. We would really appreciate that. And if you're new, maybe consider subscribing, hitting that notification bell, because we put out videos every single day. But as always, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time.